All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Beneath the Helmet, Season 3. Pretty awesome to say, Season 3. Today, I got a great episode. I have a battalion chief from Bellingham Fire Rescue, founder of Firefighter Peak Performance. I have on the air today talking everything fitness for firefighters, Ryan Provencher.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Awesome. So tell our listener today a little bit about who Ryan is. I know you live just across the water from me, not very far. And tell us a little bit about your experience going through the fire service and kind of what brought you to definitely a passion around fitness for sure.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit before the show. You know, my father was in law enforcement. He had a passion for fitness related to his career. He certainly passed that on to me at a young age. I started working out with him using the old school cement weights in our garage when I was 12, 13 years old. At that time, you may recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, all these guys were prominent as the action heroes. So I had a real passion for fitness. That's where it all began for me. I played football in high school. I was involved in sports, and really fitness and sports were the central focus in my life. And as I graduated high school, heading into college, I had no path to follow that any further in terms of sports. But then I had a wrestling coach that was a firefighter, and he was really talking about firefighting. So he planted the seed. And in terms of my studies in college, I studied exercise science, and kind of I was fortunate that these two things came together really at the same time. I just happened to be studying exercise science based on my passion for fitness and wellness. And I joined the volunteer fire department in the city of Pullman. I was going to Washington State University. And as I was doing all my training for firefighting, I'm studying biomechanics, and I'm studying kinesiology and energy systems and all of these things. And the light bulb came on, all the way back then that, hey, there's a real correlation here between, all I'm doing to prepare to become a firefighter and all I'm studying around, exercise science.
Love how you got the firsthand experience, but also the science background too, so it makes a full package when you're talking about fitness, right, for firefighters.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it. Yeah, love it. So we hear quite often the term industrial firefighter or firefighter athlete. What's your thoughts about firefighters calling themselves athletes? And do you consider firefighting and maybe other first responders as well as athletes? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I certainly do consider firefighters and first responders athletes. And I like the term tactical athlete. I think words have meaning. And so when we use the word athlete, if we just say athlete, nobody has to wonder what type of person you're talking about. And even if you look at the definition of athlete, it's some sort of physical activity that requires fitness and skill. So whether you're a football player, a basketball player, a police officer, or a firefighter, each of those are physical activities that require fitness and skill. So even from a technical standpoint, I think we can feel comfortable using the word athlete. I do want to point out, though, that it doesn't mean you have to be athletic, right? So firefighters aren't going to be out there doing agility drills. Firefighters aren't necessarily going to be doing speed drills. So we can really use the phrase athlete in a very specific context of what we do as firefighters. The other thing I want to really point out is we can get as granular as we need to get in using this phrase. So we talk about tactical athlete, fire, police, military. Well, let's dive down a little bit deeper into just fire, because the needs of a firefighter are different than the needs of a police officer or a military soldier or personnel. And then even in the fire service, whether you're a candidate, a recruit, a firefighter in operations, a firefighter in admin, or even a retiree, those demographics are going to have very unique needs when it comes to fitness and wellness. So from a functional standpoint, I really love the term athlete because it provides a very specific framework for us to support firefighters. The other thing I'll say is it really helps us get buy-in. So if we're trying to get buy-in from an individual to participate in a department fitness or wellness program, hey, let's get you to buy into the idea of being an athlete, and what does that look like? Hey, you're the union. The union, I'm a proud union member, but we get a little kind of fearful about, hey, is this going to be punitive, or our job's going to be on the line if we do too much around the area of fitness? But we can do it or present it in a very collaborative way that gets buy-in from the union, and we can use the term athlete as a framework for that. And then last but not least, when we're looking at administrators or city government, these things require funding. If we're going to do or implement a comprehensive fitness and wellness program, and we can get someone on the city council to really understand or buy into the term athlete for their firefighters in their community, now you're really opening it up to these fitness and wellness programs that you can really point out they're not expenses, they're actually cost savings programs. Like, studies have shown in the corporate world that if you have comprehensive fitness and wellness programs, you can actually save money on injuries and overtime and all these things. So the last thing I'll say about this in terms of context is, look at what we spend on apparatus. We'll buy a fire engine for $1 million, and we'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars maintaining that apparatus so it's functional every day. Why wouldn't we take that same approach in supporting our firefighters? And I really do believe that looking through the lens of an athlete gives us a framework to do that.
I'm also assuming, maybe if you have some examples of this or not, but I'm assuming that when you promote the lifestyle of being an athlete, that it probably helps with recruitment as well, I would imagine. When people say, hey, I want to join the fire service and I can also like train to be, a fit person as well, I'm assuming that probably helps with recruitment, which we know even in the career sector is becoming more and more challenging.
Yes, and I think that's a great point for two reasons. One, I just reflect on my career of 30 years. When I got to the fire department, a large percentage of our members were older. They didn't necessarily embrace the idea of fitness. We had a fitness program. We were very progressive as a department in terms of that, but the participation wasn't great, maybe 40 to 50% when I came in. But as a department, I really feel fortunate to work for a progressive department in this way. All of the interviews, all of the candidates we're trying to bring in, we're talking all about that. We're talking about fitness, not only sharing with them that our department has a commitment to fitness and wellness and safety, but also telling them we need you to tell us that you have a commitment to fitness and wellness and safety before we hire you. And so now I'm proud to say we do fitness assessment twice a year. And I was talking to one of our peer fitness trainers, estimating maybe 90% participation, and it's all voluntary. None of it is mandatory. And again, just reflecting over 30 years, seeing the culture of fitness and wellness evolve to the point where if you were to ask any of our young members, and 50% of them have 5 years or less on the job now, by the way, they would identify as an athlete, or they would tell you all about their physical endeavors off the job. So to your point, absolutely. Now more than ever, I think if you're a department that is able to convey a culture of fitness and wellness, and that you're committed to taking care of your people, you're really going to be ahead of the game in recruiting and retention, and recruiting the right person, the person that is already committed to fitness and that wants to embrace the idea of wellness as a firefighter.
I love that. And I totally agree. So when we talk about a tactical athlete, which I love that term as well, when we talk about a tactical athlete, we look at sports teams, NFL, NHL, they take rehab and recovery extremely seriously. How do you think we compare in the fire service to sports teams that we see when we consider ourselves tactical athletes? Do we do a good job or not?
Uh, Functionally and practically, I don't think we do, just because we haven't fully embraced it. But we're starting to put the pieces in place. So if you look at the IFF, IFC Wellness Fitness Initiative, it captures the medical screening, it captures the fitness assessment and physical training, fitness programming, it captures rehab and recovery. So as a fire service, we really are starting to look at these things, but we're not, as far as I can tell, we're not implementing it on a wide scale. We're not investing it in the way that I believe we could invest in it to fully support these types of programs. So again, to put this in a context for athletics, and this was back in 1990, I was on the equipment staff for Washington State University football team. And so 1990, you've got your football players, everything was provided to them to support their performance on the field. So they had performance coaches in the weight room and full access to the weight room. They had an athletic training room that they had open access to with the support of athletic trainers and physical therapists. They had nutritionists. They had tutors. They had such a wide variety of medical, clinical, and coaching support for nothing more than optimizing their performance on the field. And so if you just take that framework of what those athletes had access to, and you start even looking at, first of all, simple ways that we can support firefighters through these programs. And I think the Wellness Fitness Initiative is a great place to start because it has that framework. My dream someday is that we have first responder fitness and wellness centers. And they're very similar to these athletic complexes that you'll find for any college or professional sports teams.
Like that. And that would be a combination of all, police, fire could use that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because you can be
Very cool.
so efficient with what we spend, right? Like if you really look at our insurance coverage and how departments spend money, it's so inefficient and there's not a real framework or structure for it. You could take all that money that's already available, invest it in an intentional way where you've got, functional medicine physician, you've got an athletic trainer, you've got physical therapy, you've got performance coaches, you've got a gym, and the police and firefighters have 24-hour key card access to this one facility. You invest in this one time, you're still paying for these clinicians any which way, but now you can provide this one-stop shopping in your community to fully support your public servants.
Great idea. Yeah, when you were talking about that, I was the next question I was going to ask was, what's one thing that we could steal from sports industry and bring into the fire service? And I'm assuming that's it, but maybe I'll throw it back to you and say, is there something else that you think if we could just steal this little skill or knowledge or tip or tool or technique, whatever that looks like, into the fire service, what would that be?
And so when we look at our jobs as firefighters, everything we do revolves around structure and a framework for things. We've got policies, we've got procedures. We step into chaos and we create order. That's the nature of our entire business. Look at our IMS system, ICS, all of these things. We're very good at it. And along those lines, and to answer your question, I think if we take that model, even look at it boxes and sticks like we do for ICS, but using a different framework for it. So the first thing is medical. NFPA 1582 clearly maps out medical testing, evaluation, follow-up for firefighters. NFPA 1583 clearly does the physical fitness side of it. Nutrition is an important piece to that. Mental emotional health is an important piece to that. Sleep, stress management. And then at the end of the day, what the sports world is doing better than ever, and certainly much better than we do in the fire service, is data collection. Look at the tools that are available to us. And I think we've actually talked in the past about Oura Ring, Whoop bands. You can look at it. You can see how eating at 9 o'clock at night, going to bed at 10 affects your sleep. And if you can see that every time you eat at 9 o'clock, your sleep is jacked up, maybe eat earlier. That's one tiny little lever that you can pull to improve your sleep. And you know that because you're wearing this technology that points that out to you. So yeah, there you go. See, yep.
Oura Ring. Yep.
I've got my Oura Ring too. And so to answer your question, it comes down to structure and framework. And we have all the knowledge. When you look out there in the space, there's so many people doing amazing work in the fire service for firefighters in all of these areas. How do we collate some of that knowledge? And how do we create a framework, not only as a fire service as a whole, but in each of these departments? You can just copy and paste that same framework into a smaller scale based on the needs of the department, the resources available. It doesn't have to be full boat right out of the gate, but we can certainly take small intentional steps towards creating some structure in support of firefighter fitness and wellness.
So even in the title of your business, we talk about peak performance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of firefighters strive for peak performance. How would you describe or define peak performance as a firefighter? What does that look like?
Yeah, and it really varies, right? So in my mind, I'm really drawn to the term peak performance for several reasons that we'll touch on real quick. So in defining it, it's really based on your goals. So if you're a candidate and you know that you have to perform in the CPAT, peak performance for you is completing that evaluation in less than 10 minutes. If you're a recruit heading into academy, peak performance for you is managing the occupational demands of recruit academy. If you're in operations, peak performance for you is not only performing at a high level when the bell hits, but it's maintaining your health and wellness to protect your career longevity, to prevent injury. If you're an admin, and look at the stats for folks that go into admin, now you're more sedentary, and you and I can relate to this deeply, the stress in admin is overwhelming at times. So to ignore physical fitness as an administrator is a recipe for disaster. And last but not least, and again, I'm right behind you here, as a retiree, let's not forget about retirees. We can still bring this idea of peak performance all the way into retirement, and the details of that and how we define it is really based on the individual and their goals. The other piece of this I just want to touch on is when you imagine peak or peaking, you have to account for everything underneath it. So if you're going to, in any of those areas, if you're going to achieve peak performance, you must account for your fitness, nutrition, sleep, stress management, mental and emotional health. That's all, that tip of the iceberg, everything under the water, under the surface supports that. And the other thing that really resonates with me is peak performance is personal. I'm not comparing myself to someone else. That's a recipe for disaster too. You know, we all have these insecurities or this fear of missing out or all of these things, especially with social media. I'm comparing myself to someone else. That's not even a realistic or practical way to approach things. But what I can do is I can set my own goals and I can monitor my progress over time to ensure that I'm striving for that and I'm going to achieve peak performance, whatever that may mean for myself in this moment, and also knowing that I'm going to move the needle on that over time anyway. So that's what really draws me to the idea of peak performance.
So we've talked before about the 3 pillars of peak performance. Do you mind telling our listener today about what that looks like and what's that entailing?
Yeah, and so the 3 pillars really come from my experience in the fire service over 30 years. And I do want to just express the gratitude that I have, one, for even having access to the fire service and having a long and rewarding career. But it also just so happens that I had access to all sorts of information, whether it was my college education, you know, I was just curious about it. So I was immersed in my own personal practice. I had access to world-class mentors and influences that at times of crisis, I was able to lean on lessons learned from folks in different ways throughout my career. And so over all that time, and upon reflecting on, gosh, how would you create a framework for peak performance? And it kind of ties into everything we've talked about already. One is, well, what are athletes doing? What are athletes doing? And how is that important for us as firefighters? Because there's really a lot of things that we have to manage as firefighters that athletes really don't even have to worry about when it comes to mental health and some of these other things, or the extremes of the challenges we face on the job. So in my mind, the 3 pillars: performance, mindset. Everything we do starts with a mindset. And it comes back to even, do you consider yourself an athlete or not? And if you don't, what is your mindset around performing as a firefighter? If you do, well, guess what? The rest of this is going to be easier to access because you already have a mindset of performing as an athlete. So self-care, building your resilience toolbox, setting goals, whether it's personal goals, professional goals, or fitness goals, having something you're striving for, and a mindset for striving and achieving and improving, taking ownership of things. That's a cornerstone of what we do in the fire service. You know, if you make a mistake, take ownership of it and improve. And teamwork. The other thing that really inspired me to become a firefighter, I love being part of a team. I love being part of a team. And then now to have been a part of this fire service team for 30 years, I wouldn't trade that for the world. So that all of that revolves around a performance mindset. The performance lifestyle now takes into account all of these things that are underneath the tip of the iceberg. So nutrition has to be on point, sleep, stress management, we talked about it, mental and emotional health, cultivating relationships, and really protecting and having a sense of purpose. You know, it's easy over a 20, 30-year career to, you talk about getting jaded, or you talk about compassion fatigue and some of these things, but remember that phone call you received when you got your job, and remember how excited you were when you were offered your position. Really protect your sense of purpose around the fire service, and that's kind of part of a lifestyle, performance lifestyle. And last but not least, and we'll talk about this in a lot more detail, I think, but in my mind, performance training for firefighters is specialized physical training for firefighter tactical fitness. And I don't have any dogma around fitness or nutrition or any of these things, but I do think there are options to consider, and I do think there's a framework we can look at to help people make choices around how they approach their physical fitness and physical training. And I think we'll talk about that in more detail. But in my mind, those three pillars, if you're paying attention to those, and you're monitoring mindset, lifestyle, and your physical training over your career, and you're adjusting things as needed, you're identifying your areas that are really working well for you, and this area is not working so well. Let me research some ways to kind of shore this up. You will perform at a high level, and you'll have a long and rewarding career.
Is there one that sticks out to you that is the most challenging for the fire service to kind of excel at and be that peak performance? Is there one pillar that's kind of outweighs the others?
I think the cards are stacked against us. So in so many ways, sleep deprivation, I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. Even under the best case or the best scenario, we're still sleep deprived. Like the most diligent person that's paying very close attention to their sleep, if you're working on shift, you're sleep deprived. Well, what are the results of that? Well, weight gain, depression, anxiety. There's all these things related just to the sleep deprivation, let alone now you're exposed to traumatic events on a regular basis. There's the stress of the job. Like you said, we all want to do good work. A lot of us are type A. A lot of us come into this to perform at a high level. That's a lot of pressure. And now more than ever, when budgets are limited, there's a tremendous transition in all of these departments as we attempt to grow and as we have turnover in the fire service. The cards are stacked against us. So it's not easy. It's simple. I will argue that it's simple to kind of start adhering to some of these performance lifestyle strategies, but it is not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because the cards are stacked against us right out of the gate.
We're talking about the third pillar. Quite often we're very familiar with traditional fitness. And then we look at tactical fitness, and then we also look at functional fitness. So what's the difference between those three, in your opinion? How do you think the fire service should learn more about those three different types?
Yeah, and I just want to point out, as I said, I don't have dogma around any of this stuff, but I really do think that a framework or a way of presenting things is just helpful. So I want to put this into a context. So what I'm really drawn to as we talk about fitness and wellness is, like we said, well, let's look at what we're already doing well as a fire service, and let's use that as a framework for these conversations. So kind of leading up to answering your question, one of my favorite fire service books is The Fire Department Incident Safety Officer, written by Dave Dodson. Everyone knows him for The Art of Reading Smoke, but if you haven't read his Incident Safety Officer book, couldn't recommend it highly enough for captains and for chief officers. But in there, he talks about arbitrary aggressiveness versus intellectual aggressiveness. So arbitrary is kind of on a whim, without reason. You're gonna kick in that front door and you're gonna slay the dragon. Versus in intellectual aggressiveness, you're going to do that 360 and you're going to get a great handle on what the problems are and set up a very specific incident action plan to solve your problems. And you're not doing that in a way that's slowing you down. You're doing that in a very intentional way. So for me, when it comes to physical fitness and wellness, exactly the same. How far do you have to look to see firefighters taking an arbitrary approach to their fitness? Hey, I'm going to do 1,000 burpees today, or I'm going to, do X, Y, or Z, and I'm going to crush it, and they're just beat up and broken down, and there's no rhyme or reason to why they're doing that. Versus an intentional approach to physical training, where you're selecting your program, it's periodized with flexibility, and you're on a journey or on a path to achieve a specific destination. So with that in mind, an incident action plan, you have a size up, you have strategy, tactics, tasks, and your after action report. I believe in my approach to fitness also incorporates a size up through fitness assessment, selecting a strategy, which is the program. And this is where we get into answering your question, right? So what is your strategy for your fitness action plan? Well, for a conventional fitness program, in my mind, is more general physical preparedness. For example, if you know you're going into recruit academy and you just don't have the base strength or body weight to be successful, that might be a great place to start. You're doing, maybe you're training muscle groups, you're doing your sets and reps, you're doing your cardio on a machine, like you're just establishing a base. It's a general approach. I call that conventional fitness. For functional fitness, now you're taking that a step further. You're starting to do multi-planar, multi-joint movements. You're being more intentional about your energy system development. You're certainly incorporating flexibility, mobility into your training in functional fitness. And to me, the leader and the pioneer of functional fitness is Mark Verstegen, and he had founded a company called Athletes Performance many years ago, and now it's called Exos. He wrote a book called Core Performance, outstanding book. We have it in all of our fire station gyms. To me, that's functional fitness, but you're still in a gym, you're still using sets and reps, you're still kind of using more traditional weight training equipment. Now, tactical fitness, in my mind, is very sport specific to firefighters. And there's a very specific set of parameters that makes it tactical. So for one, we're utilizing exercises based on movement patterns, and they're loaded with simple tools. So kettlebells, sandbags, steel clubs, med balls. You can do things in various exercises through all of the critical movement patterns that you cannot do with traditional gym equipment. You just can't do it. So you can't throw a dumbbell against a wall, but you can throw a med ball against a wall. So that's one piece of it. The other thing that I think is critical for firefighters, and I have 80% of my training and also my coaching revolves around interval training. And that's not just high intensity interval training. There's low intensity interval training for mobility and flexibility. There's moderate intensity interval training for strength. And there's high intensity interval training that's very efficient in building strength and energy systems. And the beauty of intervals is you can moderate or manage or adjust the intervals for the adaptation you're looking for. So if you really want to focus on power, you would have a shorter interval, maybe a 20-10 split, where it's brief, explosive movements. If you're looking to do more aerobic energy system development, you might do as many rounds as possible. You might do, 4 times over a 20-minute time frame. So that's a big part of it. And then the other thing is considering auto-regulation. So if we're using a wide variety of exercises, we're incorporating interval training, and we've got this all as part of a 12 or 16 week periodized training plan. We have to introduce firefighters to the idea of auto-regulation. So what that means is not only is your program regulated, giving you flexibility around shift work and the stress of firefighting, you might have a high intensity day plan, but you don't feel good, or you're tired. Boom, plug in a low or moderate day and keep on trucking. That's part of your program. That's already built into your tactical fitness program. And for your workouts, same idea. If you're working out at moderate or high intensity, I use a race car analogy. You're going to go pedal to the metal on the straightaway, but if man, your form is suffering, or that doesn't feel quite right, you back off just enough to make the turn, and then okay, I'm recovered, or I feel better. Boom, now you can put the hammer down. So there's a lot of detail we can go into around the idea of tactical fitness, but it really boils down to being very intentional, to developing physical training programs for firefighters based on the demands of firefighters.
I've definitely seen an increase in the positive aspect of a lot of fitness challenges for career jobs, even volunteer jobs, using that tactical kind of firefighter fit modality, I guess you could say, where they're actually, using jaws and actually using that for their stability. They're climbing ladders. They're actually dragging Rescue Randy and that kind of stuff, right? Versus, how many push-ups can you do, or how many chin-ups can you do? That doesn't seem to be a thing anymore, right? So it's kind of nice to see that functional aspect is being put into the career physical tests.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
coming back that, so when we talk about size up, right? So size up for an incident action plan, we do our 360. Our size up for physical fitness is the fitness assessment. And you just hit the nail on the head. In my experience, there's three approaches. There's a general approach to fitness assessment. And I think coming back to the Wellness Fitness Initiative, they've got a really great general fitness assessment that, aerobic capacity, muscular strength and endurance, power, mobility, body comp. I think is really a great general fitness assessment. I also see an opportunity for a tactical fitness assessment through just an easily accessible baseline workout. I've got one, it's the Firefighter Peak Performance Firefighter Tactical Fitness Assessment. It's a 4-time training evolution. There's 6 exercises. Again, it's easily accessible. It gives you a lot of information. And then what you're talking about, a job simulation, whether it's the CPAT, whether it's the Firefighter Challenge, or whether it's a custom evolution for entry level or something in-house like a work capacity evolution based on firefighting tasks, 100% adds value to how we evaluate our fitness.
I'm curious, what has been your biggest challenge in obtaining your own personal peak performance? Is what area or what pillar maybe was the biggest challenge for you, and any tips you got to share with the audience on how you maybe got to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, so this is an easy one for me. Kind of coming back to how I came up. So back in the 80s, my whole thing was I was big into the conventional strength training. How much do you bench? How much do you squat? How much do you deadlift? Not a lot of stretching going on, not a lot of warm up or cool down going on. I was big and strong, but man, I was not very mobile at all, and really started to experience a lot of pain in my joints. And so as time went on, I discovered a lot of things that I didn't know as a younger person. First of all, I was born with hip dysplasia. So my car is out of alignment already, and I just didn't know it. And look at the miles I'm putting on. I am going hard. I'm going heavy. And so I had hip pain. I had low back pain. I ended up injuring my shoulder. So long story short, I've had 10 surgeries. I've had both hips replaced. And, it's just been a nightmare of orthopedic challenges. And so in my 30s, I just, early on, I didn't have a lot of other, like, this is how I've always done it. And so when I discovered functional fitness through Mark Verstegen, just doing that much differently and being that much more intentional about how I was training made a huge difference. So he has a whole stability ball series that he is part of his programming. I did that for 12 weeks and I felt like Spider-Man out there. I would slip and fall carrying an aid kit and a airway kit, and I would catch myself. I was like, holy smokes, like I'd never responded like that before. And I noticed a decrease in pain. And then, lucky for me, I met a guy by the name of Scott Sonnen. In my mind, he's the godfather of tactical fitness. Now he started teaching me all about how your exercise influences and is influenced by your central nervous system, and how you really need to modify the intensity of your workouts to better support how your body feels. And so over the years of studying and my own personal practice, I've developed a whole toolbox around how do I manage my pain first and foremost. So I'm not in pain hardly at all anymore. And there was a time where I worried if I could even continue as a firefighter. So just kind of, it comes back to your self-assessment, your size up. What for you personally, as you do your size up, and I would say a 360 size up goes back to all 3 pillars. What's working for you and what needs work? What are the tools that you can start putting in your toolbox, whether it's sleep strategies, nutrition strategies, an approach to fitness that resonates with you and helps you meet your goals. And then the other thing, and we can talk about this in more detail if you want, but build your team. We have great insurance as firefighters. Oftentimes, a lot of us have these health savings account where we have a lot of flexibility about where we spend that money. Have a medical doctor on your team. Have a team of clinicians that includes a physical therapist, a chiropractor, an acupuncture. Have a team of coaches, performance training, nutritionists, life coaches, like leadership coaches, whatever you need. It starts with the size up, starts with doing that 360 size up, what's working, what needs work, and then just kind of looking out there. It's all available. It's not easy to find necessarily, but start chipping away at just one thing. What's one thing that you can find that helps you bridge a gap somewhere?
Your thoughts on well, you talked about flexibility being a very key part of your peak performance.
Yeah,
Pilates, yoga, that kind
yeah,
of stuff to add to your strength training. What's your thoughts there?
yeah. I can't speak highly enough. If I could go back in a time machine and tell my 18-year-old self one thing, I would say, hey man, go to Pilates and go to yoga. Like that's the
Yeah.
one thing of all the things I could tell my young self, and believe me, there's a long list. That's the one thing. Like
Wow.
that now, man. And my son's 18. He's a baseball athlete already. I'm just like, because he wants to do the things, right? He wants to, you know, have the guns and do all the things. He's 18 years old, but I'm like, dude, do the flexibility, do the yoga, do the stretching, protect your mobility now so that you don't have to chase it later in life.
I just started doing Pilates myself, and for the longest time, I had a bit of a blockage. Like Pilates is not for me, not for firefighters, not for males. I
Yeah.
just had that mentality, and that's totally wrong. But now that I've done it, I've never been. There's parts of my body that have never been so strong in their life, and has helped me through my whole core structure, especially the glutes and the thighs. Right, so
Yeah.
big time. Yeah.
Because a lot of that stuff you can't access through any of these other modalities. You can't get to that stuff. You have to really be in these positions with either some help from the teacher or the coach or the machines that they have in the Pilates. It you just can't access it any other way. And it's just what that toolbox that we build. Why would you leave such a great tool out of your toolbox? Let's put it right in there and use it when you need it.
So the listener who's listening right now, they're listening to this podcast going, I need to really work on my fitness. Where would you suggest starting? Day one, where do I start? I've looked at myself and I've lost my fitness, I've lost my health. I am not at my peak performance. Where do I start?
Well, so I want to kind of offer four considerations, and then I have a very specific challenge. And so the four considerations are one, if you haven't already, I really encourage you to embrace the idea of being a tactical athlete. So that's step one. Step two is do this 360 size up. Look at your mindset. And that's a big part of it. Do you see yourself as an athlete? Yes or no? If not, can you get there? And then can you start looking at, your self-care and your resilience and some of these things we talked about related to mindset, your lifestyle, is your nutrition on point? How's your sleep? So step two, self-assessment, 360 size up, the three pillars we talked about. Step four is to start building this toolbox. So based on that assessment, and maybe listeners out there, their fitness is on track, but their nutrition isn't great, or gosh, their fitness and nutrition is pretty decent, but their mental health, they're really struggling. So build your toolbox, fill those gaps, find resources that help you improve your nutrition or improve your fitness or improve your mental health based on what you need personally. And the fourth thing is build that team that we talked about, whether it's a medical team, Western medicine, naturopathic medicine, functional medicine. Have a doctor that you trust, clinical team. Don't wait till you get hurt to go to physical therapy. Get in there and do some proactive physical therapy, chiro, acupuncture, nutrition, have a clinical team, and then coaching. Last but not least, coaching, performance coaching. You can, ideally, it's best to have a one-on-one coach or to actually go in and work with a coach. But there's so much available online, and there's a lot of great resources out there online that can help you meet your fitness goals. So four considerations: tactical athlete, 360 size up, build your toolbox, build your team. Here's the challenge. And I'm here, and this is me saying, here's my challenge, and I'm here to support you. So I have two, like we talked about frameworks, right? So we talked about the fitness action plan, the FAP framework. That's, to me, is the same as how we approach an incident action plan on the fire ground. It's size up, it's strategy, tactics, tasks, after action report. Do your workout. So you're going to do a workout every day for 2 weeks. So 14 days, a daily workout. You're going to start each day with 4 points. If you complete the workout that you intended to complete for the day, give yourself 4 points. If you do a partial workout, give yourself 2 points. If you miss the workout, give yourself 0 points. Nutrition. Again, I don't have any dogma around it. I think there's some things that we can all agree upon for basic nutrition. You start your day with 6 nutrition points. Any high sugar beverage or meal, -1. Any alcoholic beverage, -1. Any meal or thing that you take in that you know is just not in alignment, ultra processed, like just not in alignment with your nutrition, -1. And for each of these 2 weeks, make it your goal to average 8 or above. And at the end of 2 weeks, if you average 8 or above with your exercise daily and your nutrition daily, I promise that you're going to feel amazing. How can I help you? There's lots of things out there, but if you're interested, so I've got a free firefighter tactical fitness assessment, so you can start looking at your baseline. You can do that initial size up. I've got a free platform where I provide workouts, and I can help you. I've got some guidance in there about how you would periodize the training and where you plug low intensity, moderate intensity, and high intensity training into this 14 days. And if you have any questions, message me or email me. But that's my challenge and I call that the net scoring system, nutrition, exercise tracking. So 6 nutrition points, 4 exercise points. A perfect day is 10. A perfect week is 10. It's a simple approach to the 80-20 rule. If you average 8 or above, you're gonna do great. And it just, again, this is a framework, Chief. It's just a way to kind of give folks an actionable step, a framework, or kind of a basis to operate from, to just take that first step towards being successful in achieving their goals.
I love it. And everyone loves a challenge because that just kind of holds you accountable, right? When you say you're doing a challenge per se, right? So awesome. So as we're recording this, it's January 2025. What's in your goals for 2025 in life in general? It could be in your performance field, it could be firefighting, anything that's kind of on your list for 2025 to knock out of the park?
Yeah, so I've got kind of 3 things. One is my professional goal. So I plan to retire from the fire service in January. And, I'm a geek about all these sports documentaries and all these things. And say what you will about Aaron Rodgers. I just watched his Netflix thing and he's like,
So did I. Yeah.
Like one more season. And I'm athlete mindset, right? So I'm like, man, I got one more season in me. I got one more year in the fire service. And I want to make the best of it. I want to enjoy all that the fire service has to offer one more time, one more season before I retire. So that's my professional goal. My personal goal is related to this business, Firefighter Peak Performance. Like I said, I'm just so grateful for all of the resources and support that I've had access to. I am deeply motivated to paying it forward. I want to create a platform and a framework to share information with firefighters to help them achieve their fitness and performance goals. And I got and you can relate to this, I know, because I just see all the work that you're doing and everything you've got going, but it's a long list of things that I need to account for to meet my own goals around supporting other folks. And then I always have, a fitness wellness goal. I've got this whole new framework of I'm trying to walk 10,000 steps a day, and I'm trying to do these little kind of stretching snacks, if you want to call it that, where just spend 5-10 minutes, just open up your hip flexors or kind of getting out of this chair-shaped position that I find myself in so often these days. So, and that's in addition to my more specific performance goals in terms of how I train. But and then with all that said, I do plan to launch a 16-week firefighter tactical fitness program in April. And I'm really excited about that. It's been years in the making, and I'm just really excited to get feedback from folks and see how it lands.
All those resources will be listed in the show notes for the listener right now. So is there anything that's kind of on your mind right now that you wish I asked you, haven't asked you yet? You're like, I really need to share this with the world today. It could be about the subject we're just chatting about, or it could be something totally opposite, something that's on your mind you just want to share with the world.
I would just say it's related to everything we're talking about. And I mentioned I have an 18-year-old son, and he told me for the first time that he wants to go into the fire service. And he's a baseball athlete. He's got big goals. We'll see where that takes him. But he's got all, I'm biased, of course, but he's got all the tools you would ever need to be an amazing firefighter. And when he first told me that, I was really excited about it. Like, yes, I'm so proud and happy. And I looked at his face. Here's this kid, 18 years old, blue eyes, just bright blue eyes, a big smile, ear to ear. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if I want him to do this. And the more I thought about it and the more I asked around our young firefighters, this is an amazing job. And I am grateful for an amazing career. So my message to him and to anyone that's listening is this, and it comes back to everything we've talked about. It is never too early or too late to build your toolbox and your team. And let's stick with this. Let's stick with this sports analogy. If someone is a football player and they play in high school and they play in college and they play at the pro level, they have access to all of these resources. They're very intentional about taking care of themselves so that they can perform on the field. Let's do that. And even if your department doesn't provide, a wellness program, or maybe you don't have the resources, take ownership of it for yourself. Get your fitness on point, get your nutrition dialed in, look at your stress management, make sure you're sleeping to the best that you can. Go to that therapy. Like we tell our recruits nowadays, get your therapist before you get out of academy. Build that relationship so that you have that when you need it. And I like the toolbox analogy because some of these tools you use every day, every single day. Exercise, nutrition, sleep. You use those tools every day, and then you kind of pull out that top tray and you look at the bottom. There's tools you may only need from time to time. Maybe you go to a psychologist, or maybe you dig deeper into peer support or things like that to manage crisis that comes up. But I can only imagine, and again, you and I share an experience where, gosh, we didn't have access to much of that coming up. And we could talk all day about the negative impacts and how we're still at this age managing the trauma of all of that and the negative impacts. But what if we did? What if we paid attention from the very beginning? Or what if we started earlier paying attention to it? So that's my message. It's never too late or too early to build your toolbox and to build your team.
I could not agree more. I'm so glad you said that, because I would say the first 5-10 years of my career, I was at my peak performance for sure. And then somewhere along the lines, I get stuck behind a desk and my peak performance starts to go down into a valley. And only since I honestly retired from the fire service that I started to go back up to my peak and spend more time on myself. And I feel amazing compared to how I did 10 years ago, for sure, 100%. So it's never too late, never too late, never too early. Yeah, got it. Love it. So how can people learn more about Ryan and Firefighter Peak Performance? How can they learn more about that?
My website is firefighterpeakperformance.com. Check that out. I'm on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. My personal is Ryan Provencher. My company is Firefighter Peak Performance. I'm also the executive fitness advisor for Crackle Magazine, so I contribute on a regular basis to Crackle Magazine. And I do want to also thank Corey Pern and the team at Crackle Magazine. That's been an incredible outlet and another way for me to kind of attempt to give back in the area of fitness and wellness. And the whole team over there is just amazing, full of amazing people. So again, looking to do more with Crackle next year, and you can find me at Crackle Magazine also.
Yeah, Crackle is well, he's been on the show as well, and also Crackle is just one of those magazines that really resonates with this podcast, the mind, body, and spirit of being a firefighter, right? So it covers a lot of the aspects that we talk about on this podcast and through your business as well. So awesome. Thanks for being a part of the Crackle team. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful for it.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Hope you took some great little notes on this episode today. Ryan shared some great nuggets to make your own peak performance and make 2025 the best year ever in your health and wellness. So until next time, stay well. That's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.